Hey, what's going on, people? It's Low Heat, and today I'm answering some questions that I got in the comments of my videos or through Instagram DMs. And if you wanna ask questions to be featured on the next Q&A video, drop a comment down below or DM me on Instagram or use the contact form on my website, but preferably comment down below. I do try to answer all the comments on my videos, but I figured that the answers to these questions would be useful to the wider audience that watches my videos. So here we go. And sorry if I mispronounce some of your names, but you know. First question from Adrian Cambier. Are you from Bulgaria? And yes, indeed, I am from Bulgaria. For those of you who are not so good at geography, it's a country in Eastern Europe, a member of the European Union. It's an ex-communist country, but we're part of the free world now and have been for about 30 years. And so I'm grateful to have YouTube to be able to connect with you guys, because the videos that I make are watched all over the world. Next question. Chase Isaac wants to know, who is your favorite producer, dead or alive? Well, there are too many to mention them all, but off the top of my head, I would say maybe Flying Lotus. And I remember when I first heard his album, 1984, I think it was in 2008, when I heard that first, I realized that I can combine hip-hop beats with electronic sounds and experimental sounds. So that opened my imagination to the style that I'm doing today. Another producer that is legendary but probably a bit underrated, Prefuse 73, super dope experimental producer. And yeah, Prefuse 73 is a legend. I also like, you know, more melodic stuff like Damn Funk on some West Coast vibes. Eloquent is another really dope producer. I've listened to all of his albums. Super cool dude. Next question from Anton Popov. When do you export all of your stems from Machine to Ableton? How do you know when the beat making stage is over? And what do you do Machine aside of just sketching? Maybe some processing? Or you're doing it in Ableton also? First of all, gotta say, I don't always use Machine. A lot of times I just use Ableton Live all the way through. I also have the push too, so it's really cool for making beats in Ableton as well. And I use the session view for that. But generally I know that the beat making stage is over when I have enough scenes and enough musical ideas and enough material to sustain a whole arrangement. That's pretty much it. Or maybe when I'm just out of ideas and I can't think of anything else to add to the track. This is when I export the stems and do the arrangement and mixing in Ableton Live. And it's pretty much the same when I use the session view of Ableton. I transfer my ideas from the session view to the arrangement view when I feel that there is nothing more to be added to the track. So yeah, when I use Machine, I pretty much compose the main musical ideas there, and I use the great sounds and effects, do a bit of sound design, but I do all the mixing in Ableton Live. Next question from Eccentric 2019. After sampling, how do you figure out the notes and the chords to use to add more instruments? For example, like the bass you added so fast, is it by ear or are you a professional keyboard player? Yeah, I'm not a professional keyboard player, but I do it by ear most of the time. I just play all the notes on a piano preset along with the sample and figure out which notes sound in key with the sample. That's pretty much the whole process. And when you know a bit of music theory, you can figure it out faster. Because for example, if you have the note E sounding good with the sample, then your first instinct is to try, for example, B, because that is the perfect fifth of E, and so on and so forth. So a bit of music theory, ear training always helps when figuring out the key of a sample. Otherwise, if you're still struggling with that, there is an app that I would recommend, and that is the Auto Key app by Antares, the makers of Auto-Tune. Bad news for Android users, it's only on iOS for now. But it's really useful, and you just point your mobile device to your speakers and it tells you the key of whatever you're playing, and it's extremely accurate. It works very, very well. So the Auto Key app from Antares, it's free. Highly recommended for people who are struggling to find keys of samples. Next question from Benjamin Dam. He DM'd me on Instagram and he wanted to know, do you think it's important to put kicks and snares in key? There seems to be a difference of opinion concerning this issue, particularly within the boom bap style. So I think it's definitely important to have them in key with your track, but I feel this is more important when you have a long kick with a long tail, because that decaying tail at the end of the kick, that is the tonal part of the kick. If the frequency or the notes that this tonal part corresponds to is out of key or out of tune with the rest of your track, it can sound kind of weird. But then again, if you have a bass line, you wouldn't really want to have such a long tonal tail. And when you use a short kick, it may not always be that apparent what note that is. And with snares, they tend to also have a tonal part as well as a noise part. And if there is a very prominent tonal part and it's not in key with your track, it can sound kind of weird sometimes. But then again, I always trust my ears. I just choose the sounds that work well for my track, or even vice versa. If I do the drums first, I kind of tend to choose a key that sounds good with the drums that I've chosen. So short answer is, doesn't matter if it's boom bap or whatever. It's good to have them tuned, but then again, use your ears. If it sounds good, it's good. If you hear a problem, then maybe look into analyzing the frequencies and tuning your drums. Next question from Green Guy. What native instrument expansion pack do you use for bass? That is a good question. I used to use Monarch for years, like from 2013 up until maybe last year. Almost always used Native Instruments Monarch because it had such a convincing, such a punchy sound. Sounds as good as a hardware synth. I also use the Novation Bass Station 2, which is an analog synth. Again, gives me a really thick and fat tone for bass sounds. But since the beginning of 2021, I bought Yuhi's Repro, which is basically two synths, Repro 1 and Repro 5. And this has, again, a super convincing, super fat bass tone. And I know this is not a Native Instruments plugin, however, it works really great in Machine because it's NKS compatible and you can browse it from the Machine browser and control the parameters. So at the moment, Yuhi Repro is probably my go-to VST or plugin for bass. And another good one that I really like from Native Instruments is Track 1 Bass. It's actually a free one. You can get it with complete start. Again, pretty decent sounding, not analog sounding per se, but awesome bass plugin. And last question, not necessarily music production related, more of a video making YouTube type question from Ships Without Sales. What software do you use to edit your videos, and do you script and make a storyboard first, or do you just freestyle and edit the videos later? I use Final Cut Pro to edit videos. And the scripting versus improvising question, really good question. Scripting your whole video can take a lot of time in terms of preparation, but it saves you time in terms of editing it. Doing a full improvisation, it's not really a good idea because I always forget something when I've done that, so I rarely do that anymore. I've found a happy medium that a lot of people have recommended. To make a decent video, you need to make an outline of the main points that you're going to be discussing in the video. This way you make sure you don't forget anything. and then you edit the parts where you mess things up, like I do actually pretty often, because I'm not a native speaker in English. But yeah, making an outline with bullet points is essential when making presentations and videos. So these are all the questions that I have for this first Q&A session. Once again, make sure you drop a comment or message me on IG or using the contact form on my website. They are linked in the description of the video. If you have any questions, production related or not, and I will feature some of these questions in my next Q&A video. And with that said, that's all for now. See you in the next video, guys. Peace.